this computer. If I go to FOA, PowerPoint sites, PDF. I like the PDF sites, investigating theft tax. I like chapter 7. Chapter 7 is amazing. But one thing I need to do with the Zoom, it's recording, but I need to share my screen. So I'm just going to share my screen and we just, yep, share, and then it's out. Great. So the two chapters for this week are investigating theft acts and investigating concealment. Now, this is different from the fraud triangle. What we're talking about is in some ways, we're talking about the act of fraud triangle. We're not talking about the motivation for fraud triangle. The motivation, the original fraud triangle, is looking at the pressure, the opportunity, and the rationalization. Okay, so the mental, you got the financial pressure maybe, and then the opportunity, weak controls, etc. All right, but once we get to chapter 7, 8, and 9, now we're looking at the act. And so we make another triangle. That is, the number one is the act of stealing, all right, the theft act. Number two is the covering it up. And then number three is the conversion, converting the loot into, and there's one thing that fraudsters like to do, and that is convert their takings into some lifestyle, some luxury, something. They're not just going to go and invest their fraud proceeds. So you got theft act, you've got the concealment, and then you've got conversion. So chapter 7 is probably the most animated of these three, because once we start trying to investigate concealment and conversion, well, it's kind of too late, and you're really into let's just have a look. You're really into investigation, okay? Like fraud detection, the difference between fraud detection and investigation, this is where you've got to develop that preponderance of evidence, that predication that some fraud has occurred. And that's when you go from fraud detection to investigation. And what is interesting here is I showed you the money slide in week 2, 3, 4, where that money slide, that two circles, creating a culture of honesty and creating those physical barriers that limit any opportunity to do fraud. All right. But the big money slide in the second big money slide, remember the money slide is if there's one slide that you can take away and make a lot of money on, all right, as a consultant, as a financial CFO in your organization, then that was the money slide. Here is the second money slide. And it's really the vulnerability chart, and basically like an Excel sheet. And there are 9 items. And the whole idea is at the beginning of your investigation or even the detection stage, maybe the detection is realized because of 1, 2, or 3 of the symptoms has raised their head. Abnormal behavior, maybe analytical anomalies, maybe internal control weakness, maybe accounting documentation, maybe extravagant lifestyle, maybe a tip and complaint. It doesn't have to be all 6 of those items. It only has to be 2 or 3 of those items. When they come together, then you get the, what do you call it? You get the predication that, hey, there's something fishy here. It's likely that we have detected fraud. Then we go to investigation, and then that's the beginning of the investigation is really, okay, what do we know? What don't we know? And so, for example, here, there may be 9 items or 9 questions you need to ask about the fraud. That is, what was taken, who had the opportunity, maybe 2, 3, or 4 different people. How were the assets moved? How was the theft concealed? How were they converted? What red flag symptoms? All right, remember the symptoms? A, B, C, D, E, F, right? You know the symptoms, chapter 6 here, chapter 5, which is all about detecting fraud. Then you've got vulnerability chart of possible motives, then on pressures, motives on rationalizations, and then key internal controls. Is there anything weakness in terms of controls? And so at the beginning of an investigation, you may only be able to fill out 4 or 3 or 5 of these boxes. And then that's okay. All right. And this becomes your roadmap for the investigation. And that, and your job is not to try and reinvent the wheel and that, oh, what do I do? What did O'Connor do? Do I have to go and read this forensic accounting textbook? No, just work with this template and try. Your job as an investigator is to get evidence, ask questions so you can fill out as much detail as you can on these 9 areas. And that's it. And by the time you've filled out those 9 areas, it will help you to start to narrow down who is likely to be the culprit. And the big thing that they teach you from chapter 7, 8, 9, and so forth is you don't go and interview the culprit, the most likely culprit, in your first stages of investigation. All right, you've got to go around and get evidence around the before you go to the culprit. And what you're going to learn in a couple of weeks' time is that the whole objective of an interview, the objective is not to get the police involved. The objective is not to get a court's judgment. The objective is, guess what? Just to get a confession from the fraudster. That's all. And why do you ask? Why do you say that? Why not the police? Why not the court? Why not let them do the job? No, not the police. Do you know why? Because the police are freaking busy. They are busy, all right, looking after other criminals. They don't care about a little petty theft by an employee in your organization. They don't care if tools were stolen. They don't care if sales vouchers were improperly used, right? That's not their priority. So don't bother them. On the other hand, courts, if you get the courts involved too early, you're going to waste a bucket load of money and it's going to be even greater than the cost of the fraud itself. So stay away from the courts, stay away from the police. Your objective in this middle part of forensic accounting that's starting this week and going for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks is to get a confession. That's it. You just want to get a confession from the fraudster, because once you get a confession, then maybe you can pursue damages in the court. Maybe then you can get the police involved. The police are happy to get involved if they don't have to do the investigating. So that's the big message I want you to take away from this week, even though it looks a bit more complicated, chapter 7 and chapter 8, looking at theft, concealment. But take away this, all right? Number 1, your second money slide is table 7.1, the vulnerability chart, okay? Your second money slide. And number 2, over the coming weeks, the chapters are all about teaching you how to get a confession. How do you get someone to confess? Of course, if you start if the evidence mounts and mounts and mounts and mounts, it's very little that someone can do, a fraudster can do, but not confess, especially if the evidence is just so insurmountable, right? So that's the big message. and I want to uh, take that away and be not confused about all the detail in chapter 7 and chapter 8, but feel emboldened and feel empowered that, hey, Neil's making it easy for us. He's saying chapter 7 presents a second money slide. He made it so easy in the first 4 weeks. He said, here's your money slide. This is one page. One page. If you learn one thing, this is all you need to know. Now I'm saying, here's your second page that you all you need to know. And so start simple, keep it simple and build on that. And that's my biggest encouragement and motivation as the course coordinator in this unit. So thank you for that. And we'll go on to the questions that we're going to be covering today. And I'm just going to pause recording for a moment.